The email hit at exactly 2:30 a.m., just as the cabin lights dimmed and the Berlin skyline vanished below the clouds. Subject line, termination notice. Effective immediately. I blinked hard, assuming the screen hadn't loaded. But it had. It was all there crystal clear. My name, my role, and the sentence that knocked the breath out of me. Your employment with Nexora Global is hereby terminated, effective immediately. No call, no meeting, no thank you. Just a cold message from Carter Wynn, the same CEO who told me 2 weeks ago, "You're the only one I trust to finish this Sloan." I looked around. Everyone else in business class was asleep, curled up in pods with eye masks and champagne-stained pillows. Meanwhile, I was 41, exhausted, betrayed, and hovering 38,000 feet above a company I no longer worked for. 10 days, 3 continents, Singapore for technical alignment, London for regulatory approval, Berlin for the final close. I didn't just contribute to the deal, I architected it. 3 global giants unified under Nexora's new data ecosystem. A $1.5 billion agreement over 5 years. And now I was gone. Not angry. Not yet. Just numb. Like someone kicked a ladder out from under me mid-climb. I stared at my work laptop, then calmly reached below the seat and pulled out my second machine, matte black, unbranded, encrypted. The one no one at Nexora knew existed. I opened it, logged in, watched the screen flicker awake, and smiled. They thought this was the end. They had no idea I'd already begun. 3 weeks earlier, I'd watched a $400 million contract collapse in Nexora's Manhattan office. Legal panicked. Sales cried. I stepped in, rewrote the proposal in 20 minutes, salvaged the deal, and expanded it into 2 new regions. Everyone clapped. Carter gave me one of his hollow grins and whispered, "You should be EVP." But the title never came. Just rumors, delays, then silence. Until one board lunch, I overheard it brilliant. But let's be honest. Sloan walks into a room and nobody else wants to speak. Not too junior, too strong, too sharp, too hard to control. I was the one they called to save things. But never the one they invited when credit was handed out. It wasn't about value. It was about threat. I wasn't overlooked. I was sidelined. Quietly. Not anymore. I returned to my desk, booked 3 international flights back-to-back, and dove into the biggest deal of Nexora's history. If they wouldn't give me the title, I'd build one of my own. Funny how betrayal doesn't always crash in. Sometimes it seeps in like a leak, quiet, steady, until you're standing ankle-deep in damage, wondering when it started. A year ago, Ivy Wynn had made a mess. Newly hired as a strategic advisor, a vague role crafted by her father Carter. No tech background. 2 years out of undergrad. And a massive misstep during a live client demo, she triggered an unauthorized data pull that exposed personal data from a Singapore pilot partner. It should have made headlines. Legal panicked. Marketing froze. Carter called me directly. "Handle it quietly," he said. She didn't mean to. She just didn't know. I didn't argue. I burned every favor I had, rewrote the narrative, and got it buried in trade blog noise. I even took the media call so Ivy's name wouldn't show up anywhere. No thanks. No credit. I told myself it was loyalty. But loyalty without reciprocity turned sour. 3 days before the Berlin flight, I opened the shared drive to finalize the Trivexa pitch deck charts, models analysis I'd spent weeks refining. Everything was intact, except the author name. Ivy Wynn. I assumed it was accidental, until I noticed the edits, phrasing, shifts, layout tweaks, but the foundation was mine. The pitch was mine. The name on it wasn't. She hadn't even told me. That night, I sat in my Chicago apartment, city lights, blinking through the blinds. I stared at the screen, fists clenched, and then I did nothing. No confrontation, no email, because I already knew how it would go. They'd say it was collaboration, that I was overreacting. That word emotional always shows up when a woman defends her work. So I said nothing, packed my bags, and reminded myself this wasn't personal. But it was. Because that kind of erasure doesn't shout, it whispers, slowly. I'd already started building my exit 6 months earlier. Not out of spite, but out of survival. I called it Travera. No headlines, no seed round. Just a clean LLC encrypted cloud access and a quiet team of former engineers, product leads, and compliance analysts, all burned by the same machine that once praised us. We weren't building revenge. We were building better. We didn't have to announce anything. Travera wasn't built for revenge. It was built for the future, quiet, calculated, inevitable. Still, I stayed silent. I was under contract, still drawing a Nexora paycheck, still earning trust I no longer valued. I never planned to light the match, but someone else did. It happened over dinner in Berlin. Across from me sat Luis Meda, CEO of EuroSouth, a legacy telecom giant and 1/3 of the Trivexa Alliance. We just wrapped our 3rd round of revisions, and he finally relaxed, tie-loosened glass of scotch in hand. He looked at me with the kind of curiosity that isn't small talk. What would it take for you to lead instead of follow? I froze mid-fork. You don't talk like an employee, he said. You sound like someone who built something and gave it away. I laughed. Because someone else inherited it. He nodded serious. Well, if you ever want to change that, call me. Some of us invest in people, not logos. That moment stayed with me, not because it flattered me, but because it confirmed what I'd been trying to suppress. Clients saw it. They noticed who did the work and who took the credit. Back in New York, I told no one. Not about Luis, not about the quiet pings from Telnova's procurement chief, not about Eurocom's legal team asking about partnership structures outside Nexora. But I did expand Travera's blueprint. I met privately with my core Jenna Park, former legal lead, Raheem Silva systems architect, Noah Tan finance strategist. No emails, no offices, apartments, dinners, encrypted drives. Every move was a quiet one. Nexora thought I was wrapping their biggest deal. They didn't know I was quietly designing a better version of them. And then came the gala. Gold linens, champagne, live jazz. Ostensibly a celebration of international growth, but really a coronation Ivy Wynn, now VP of Global Strategy. The same Ivy whose error I'd buried a year ago. The same Ivy who took my title, my department, my team. I stood behind her half-lit by chandelier, light holding a champagne glass I hadn't touched. She clinked flutes, parroted buzzwords, thanked everyone who paved the way. She didn't say my name, not once. As Jenna passed me with a whisper, "This is surreal." I realized surreal was generous. They weren't just rewriting the future. They were erasing the past, my past, and I was letting them for now. Carter took the mic near the end. Still tall, still smug in his flawlessly tailored suit. His voice was built for boardrooms, smooth enough to sell sincerity to skeptics. We've watched Ivy grow into this role he began, and I can't think of anyone better to lead our global expansion under the Trivexa initiative. My hands tightened around the champagne glass. The room clapped. Then he added casually, "She'll be shadowing Sloan during the upcoming trip to support that transition." Shadowing me. As if I'd agreed to mentor the woman who took my title, the one who'd copied my pitch deck, in a department I'd built from scratch, on a deal I was about to close after 10 months of sleepless nights and international flights. My stomach twisted. I wanted to laugh, or scream, or shatter my glass into the ice sculpture shaped like a globe. Instead, I smiled. Sharp, polished, performative. They clapped again, and I let the noise settle like broken glass inside my chest. Not because they replaced me, but because they expected me to help her do it. With grace. I sipped the champagne. It was flat. Ivy leaned in her voice, warm fake. "Can we talk through the Berlin structure before the meetings, still catching up on London details?" "You should," I said evenly. "They ask tough questions." She laughed. "I'll just point them to you. You always know what to say." I smiled, the kind of smile that says you're already off the itinerary. They didn't know it yet, but I'd rerouted. No Ivy, no Carter, no Nexora chaperones. Just me and the deal I built. By the time I landed in Tokyo, I hadn't slept in 4 days. The gala. The fake congratulations. Ivy's request, Carter's smugness. All noise. What mattered now was what came next. Telnova, Eurocom, EuroSouth. 3 legacy firms joining forces in a cloud migration that could reshape global telecom. I had 10 days, 3 cities, 1 shot. If you're still with me, then you already know this wasn't the end. So if you want to see what comes next, hit subscribe and let's take the next step together. In Tokyo, Yuki Asano, Telnova's CTO, didn't wait for pleasantries. Why should we believe your system is different? I showed him specs I'd developed with Nexora's engineers, secure jurisdiction. Ready peer-reviewed. He nodded. You understand. The others only talk. Later I asked, if there were a leaner version, same tech, less friction, would you be open? He didn't answer. But as he got in the car, he said, send the materials, privately. And that was all I needed. The door had opened. Quietly. You wrote this, Linda asked, eyebrows raised. Yes. Off the record, I replied. She smiled. Well, maybe next time we're across the table, you'll be negotiating for your own company. Something stirred in me, not pride confirmation. She wasn't just impressed. She was wondering why I wasn't already leading what I built. And she wasn't alone. By the time I landed in São Paulo, I was running on caffeine and resolve. Brazil was the final leg, financial structure, revenue share, data sovereignty. All the red flags in one room. And Ivy nowhere. She was supposed to shadow me. But I'd changed my itinerary, routed through Argentina, and arrived a day earlier. Nexora still thought I was in the air. I was already on the ground, already preparing. The meeting with Luis Meda, CEO of EuroSouth, lasted nearly 4 hours. He grilled me on risk exposure, capital support, post-integration accountability. The board hated my numbers. I held my ground. Finally, he leaned back. I trust you, Sloan, he said, tapping the table. But I don't trust Nexora. You know that, right? I do. If this fails later, it won't. He watched me closely. Unless you leave. I leaned in. And if there were a way for you to get the system without the politics, noise, or bottlenecks, would you be open? Luis didn't blink. You already know the answer. 3 cities, 3 meetings, 3 quiet invitations planted. Each the same theme, doubt toward Nexora. Trust toward me. Not the logo, me. I carried the deal through time zones and jet lag. I answered questions no one else could. I rewrote contracts in silence, and I stood between billion-dollar hesitation and billion-dollar momentum. But I wasn't just closing a deal. I was opening the next chapter. The cabin lights dimmed as we crossed the equator. I stared out the window, clouds like shadows over the ocean. I opened my laptop to review final notes. The contract summary was clean. The numbers aligned. The client was in, and then glitch. The server logged me out. Slack expired. Outlook gone. Then the email. Subject termination notice. Sender, Carter, win. My chest tightened. Your employment with Nexora Global is terminated. Effective immediately. Access revoked. Do not contact clients. No thank you. No warning. Just silence. At 35,000 feet. Execution, not exit. Mid-air. Alone. I just closed the biggest deal in Nexora's history. I should have been furious. And somewhere deep down, I was. But mostly, I felt insulted. Not for being let go, but for how they did it. As if I were disposable, replaceable, powerless. As if the woman who carried their entire international expansion on her back could be erased with a revoked badge and a cold email. They thought access was power. That disabling my email would dismantle my influence. That I had no backup? They were wrong. 6 weeks earlier, before Carter's silent power grabs. Before Ivy's rehearsed promotion, I'd followed protocol and created a private backup of my Trivexa files. Legal approved it. Standard practice for high-risk international deals. And I had everything. Pitch decks, contract versions, financial models, transcripts, client feedback scribbled during late-night calls. They claimed I had no right to speak to the clients. They forgot I was the reason those clients still answered. I pulled out the matte black laptop from beneath my seat. the one I never synced to Nexora. It hummed to life, encrypted offline untouched. The desktop glowed a minimalist logo. Trevara. I opened the encrypted folder. Everything was there. Every draft, every strategy, every clause. Legally sound. Authored by me. The fury settled not as rage, but as resolve. Carter didn't fire me. He freed me. They thought cutting me loose midair would break me. But all it did was snap the last tether holding me back. I opened a blank document and typed 3 words, "Let's begin." Then I closed the lid and looked out the window. The sky outside was still dark, but for the first time in months, I saw a horizon. The city looked unchanged from the taxi. Glass towers gleamed. People rushed with phones and coffee. But everything was different. At 8:40 a.m., we pulled up to Nexora's headquarters. I stared at the building I'd entered nearly every day for 9 years. It looked smaller. Or maybe I'd just outgrown it. Inside, Daniel, the security guard, froze. "Ms. Sloan." "I wasn't told you'd be in today. I wasn't told I wouldn't," I replied, holding up my badge. "Red light? Access denied." Daniel winced. "HR flagged it this morning?" I nodded. Calm, detached. The lobby buzzed as I stood half and half out of the place I'd once called home. But all I felt was displacement, like a ghost revisiting a life that had already moved on. No questions, no curiosity. My desk was already stripped bare. The plants I kept alive through jet lag and budget cuts, gone. The framed thank you letter from Eurocom vanished. Even my chair had been replaced, a plastic tag still hanging off the back. I stood there for a moment, staring at the empty surface where my entire professional identity once lived. My nameplate hadn't been moved. It had been erased. On a side table, I spotted the latest internal newsletter. The headline, "Ivy Win to Lead Nexora Global Rollout." I scanned the article, following Sloan Mercer's transition out of the company. Transition. Sanitized. Sterile. No mention of who built the strategy. Who negotiated in 3 languages. Who salvaged 2 contracts from collapse. I dropped the newsletter in the trash and walked out. The city felt louder. The horns sharper. The wind colder. No one knew. No one cared. I was just another face on the sidewalk. But I had been erased. I walked 6 blocks to the old hotel I used between flights. They still remembered me. No questions. Just a key to a 15th floor room overlooking the river. I closed the curtains, took off my shoes, sat on the bed, and for the first time in days, I let myself feel it. Not grief, not defeat, just clarity. Nexora had never truly seen me. They had used my intellect, my presence, my network. And now, with a press release and a locked badge, I was deleted like an outdated record. But I wasn't broken. I was free. I opened the matte black laptop, the one with the future I'd built in secret. The secure client portal Rahim and Jenna had coded. Fully encrypted. Clean. I opened the contact list. Luis Mehta, Yuki Asano, Linda Clark. Then I sent 3 emails. Just 4 words each. The door is open. The next morning, I sat with a black coffee and a croissant I barely touched. The room was quiet. No confetti. No headlines. Just stillness, the kind that comes before a shift. I knew what was happening at Nexora. Carter would have walked into the Monday meeting already uneasy. Maybe someone handed him the client status updates. Except this time, there weren't any. Because I wasn't on their side anymore. And neither were the clients. The line went dead. Back in my hotel suite, I refreshed the Trevara dashboard, built on Rahim's design, encrypted end-to-end logging, every client action in real time. It wasn't flashy. It was clean, silent, invisible. Human-first onboarding, no passwords shared over email, no clunky portals. Within an hour of my message, all 3 clients had signed in. Each had scheduled a private exploratory session with Trevara's core team. No declarations, no legal fireworks, just transition. Quiet, certain. Nexora wasn't under attack. It was being left behind. And in enterprise tech, silence isn't absence. It's a verdict, Around 100 p.m., Carter made a final attempt. He had someone from investor relations reach out to all 3 clients, publicly framing it as a leadership continuity update. A polite push for joint press statements, reaffirming Nexora's control of the Trivexa rollout. Only one firm responded. No greeting, no signature. Nexora no longer speaks for us. You do. I stared at that sentence for a long time. Plain, honest, weightier than any promotion Carter had dangled. I didn't reply. I stood and walked toward the window. The city churned below, clueless that 32 floors up the company that once erased me was unraveling in a language it no longer understood. Jenna called later that night. "They're spiraling," she said. "Ivy's freaking out. Carter thinks this is your doing." I let the silence hang. "They're begging the clients to talk. No one's answering." "They don't need to," I replied. Jenna hesitated. "You sure you don't want to say something?" "Go public." I looked at the new Trevara homepage Rahim had just pushed live. No founder bio, no photo, just a logo. And a line of code in the footer. "What we build belongs to those who build it." "No," I said. Let them sit in the silence a little longer. This wasn't revenge. This was clarity. Delivered without noise. At 9:30 the next morning, the press release went live. No banners, no LinkedIn fluff. Just a clean statement on Trevara's site. Trevara announces 1.5B global partnership with Telnova, Eurocom, and Eurosouth. Modular cloud infrastructure across 3 regions. Secure, scalable, client-led. By 10 a.m., the email started. Not from Nexora, from journalists, analysts, VC scouts. Curious how a firm with no site last week just landed the cleanest multi-region pivot in the market. By 11:15, TechWatch Global had the headline, "The Silent Takeover. Who is Trevara and why is Nexora panicking?" Ivy had locked herself in the conference room with 3 junior comms staff. Jenna texted from legal. They're scrambling to draft a counterstatement. Carter wants to blame sabotage. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. Because this wasn't sabotage. It was precision. The kind of quiet power no one sees coming until it's already done. They didn't know where it started or how far it spread. Just that they weren't in control anymore. That was the difference between noise and clarity. Nexora had noise. I had clarity. By 12:20 p.m., Financial Chronicle called it the boldest silent shift in enterprise tech since the 2011 Altivix pivot. By 1:15 p.m., Trevara's inbox had over 70 new partnership inquiries and VC invitations. We didn't accept any. Not yet. We were still sealing the foundation. Meanwhile, the clients, Yuki, Linda, Luis, remained silent. No press quotes, no tweets. They didn't owe an explanation. They had simply made a choice. And they chose me. Rahim walked into the hotel suite around 2 p.m., holding a printed copy of the press release and a bottle of non-alcoholic champagne. "You gonna frame this?" he asked. "I might tattoo it," I said, half smiling. He handed me a manila folder. "Also, financials. Budgets are transferring." Jenna double-checked everything. "It's clean." I nodded. Not out of relief, but recognition. This wasn't luck. It was design. Every step, every word, every silence had been intentional. I didn't steal Nexora's clients. I earned their trust while Nexora was busy promoting legacies over leadership. That night, a voicemail came in from a number I hadn't saved, but recognized. Carter. I listened. Once then, deleted it. He didn't yell. He didn't plead. He just asked the question. They all ask when they finally understand what they've lost. Was this personal? Of course it was. It was also professional. It was strategic and overdue. I stood by the window. The skyline no longer felt cold. It felt earned. They took everything from me with noise. I took everything back in silence. No speech, no headline, just a name on a page. Sloan Mercer, CEO Trevara and the world watching. Not because I shouted, but because the results spoke louder than anything I could say. The pieces clicked in real time. I opened my folder and laid out Travara's infrastructure blueprint, clean, updated, and fully mapped to Merrick's regional growth targets. It was lean, fast, proven. His CTO had already reviewed and signed off on the specs privately. Pending this final review, Merrick said, turning to Carter, "I understand your position, but we can't afford another misalignment. Not after Trivexa." "That was sabotage," Carter snapped. I didn't flinch. That was foresight. I offered them a choice. They chose clarity over chaos. Carter turned to Merrick, voice tight. "You really want to partner with someone who abandons her company mid-deal?" I smiled. Calm, certain. "I don't abandon ships," I said. "I rebuild them without the people who drilled the holes." Silence. Then Merrick looked at his legal team. "We'll proceed with dual review. And I want Sloan's proposal considered primary." Carter stepped back like the air had been knocked out of him. I could have left it there. I could have taken the win and let him stew in his loss. But I didn't come just for the deal. I came for the dignity they stripped from me. I turned to Carter, met his eyes. Steady, cold, one condition. Everyone froze. "I'll proceed with joint infrastructure only if you're not involved. I don't work with leaders who fire their architects mid-flight." The silence turned heavy. Marek glanced at his team, then nodded. "I respect that." Carter's face collapsed. In that moment, I didn't see a CEO. I saw a man realizing the game was no longer his. He left the room without a word. Later, outside the Summit Center in spring-lit Munich, I strolled toward a quiet courtyard. Rahim and Jenna were waiting, both with coffee in hand, watching the summit live stream on their phones. "Heard you dropped a bomb," Jenna smirked. "No bombs," I said, sitting down beside them. "Just balance." Finally restored. Rahim raised his cup. "To Travara." And for the first time in months, I didn't feel erased. I felt known. This wasn't about revenge. This was about ownership, about never having to ask permission again, and making sure the people who built the future were the ones who got to lead it. To the architect. I didn't raise my glass. I wasn't finished yet. But for the first time in over a decade, I didn't feel like my name needed defending, because I had walked into the very room they once tried to erase me from and claimed it on my terms. At 7:45 a.m., I stepped into the headquarters of Travara Systems, tucked above the fog line in San Francisco. The early sunlight filtered through panoramic windows, casting golden streaks across polished oak floors. The air was quiet, not sterile, filled with a kind of earned calm. The kind that comes from something built with care, not conquest. On the far wall, a new plaque shimmered in brushed bronze. It read, "Travara, founded by Sloan Mercer." Not buried in footnotes, not hidden behind PR blurbs, just there. Simple. Whole. Undeniable. I stood before it for a beat, fingertips grazing the edge, remembering every proposal someone else presented, every slide deck where my work appeared under another name, all the meetings where my voice was present but never heard. But now I didn't have to speak loudly. The building spoke for me. Upstairs, I walked into the new boardroom. Warm walnut table, soft lighting, walls lined with sound panels and open whiteboards. A room designed for ideas, not power plays. Linda Clark was reviewing deployment milestones with Rahim. Luis Mata joined from São Paulo, teasing Rahim about his lack of soccer loyalty. Yuki Asano had sent over 3 bonsai trees, one for each continent Travara now supported. I sat at the head of the table, but it didn't feel like a throne. It felt like balance. That afternoon, I got the alert. Mallory Wynn had resigned from Nexora Global. No press statement, just a line in the trades, leadership restructure underway following key client departures. An hour later, another ping. Carter Wynn removed from the board by unanimous vote. No press meltdown, no lawsuits, just quiet unraveling. The same kind of quiet they tried to use against me. Only now they were the ones vanishing. I didn't toast. I didn't gloat. Because this was never about revenge. It was about reclamation. If you felt something stir while hearing my story, if you've ever sat in a room where your work spoke louder than your title, where your voice was cut from the final draft, or where someone less capable took your seat, then I need you to do something for both of us. Say something. Not because I need the applause, not because I need revenge, but because there are thousands of us out there quietly holding up entire departments, entire companies, entire futures without being seen. I told this story because someone needs to hear that quiet doesn't mean powerless, that invisible doesn't mean replaceable, and that sometimes the best way to respond is to build something no one can take away from you. So leave a comment, not just for me, but for every Sloan out there still holding it together while being told to be grateful. Tell me what you've carried. Tell me what you've reclaimed. Tell me what they tried to erase and what you're building instead. And if you're still in the shadows, still waiting for your moment, don't rush. Build, prepare, protect what's yours until the time comes to move. And when it does move, with quiet fire. Because the truth is, you don't have to burn bridges. You just have to walk across them stronger than when you started. If this story resonated with you, share it with someone who's still waiting to be seen. And if you want more stories where the underestimated rise, not with noise, but with purpose, hit that subscribe button. We're just getting started. And so are you.